Hi, my math friends. Today's video goes along with lesson 5-8 in your Red Holt textbook. But before I jump into that video, I want to make sure that I remind you of some of your prior knowledge that is going to be very important to have before you watch the duration of the video. Okay, so in class over the last couple of days, we have been working on multiplication with fractions. We first started by multiplying a whole number by a fractional amount. Okay, here it is again, a whole number by a fractional amount. When we did those problems, a whole number times a fraction, we remembered that a multiplication sign means groups of. Okay, so I have 5 groups of 3/8. That's like having 5 pizzas that are each 3/8 full. Okay, if you think about that, I have 5 pizzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each of my pizzas is 3/8 full. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Okay, each of my pizzas is 3/8 full. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. Okay, so I have 5 pizzas that are all 3/8 full. If you start counting eighths all together, you're going to find that I have 15 eighths. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 eighths. I could regroup those into boxes. That would be one whole box. That's 8 of my eighths. And then the other 7 eighths would be the rest. So look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those eighths is going to fill one box. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 eighths more. Okay, this is something you should already know. Here's another one. If I have 3 groups of 1/2, think about that. I have 3 groups. There's 1 group, there's 2 groups, there's 3 groups. And in those 3 groups, I have a half in each. I can put those together. The 3 halves put together is going to give me 3 halves, or it's going to give me 1 whole. Those two would make 1 whole, and 1/2 more. Okay. The other prior knowledge that you should have is to multiply 2 fractions. We have talked a lot about how you could draw a picture to show 1/2. This multiplication sign means of 1/2 of 3/8. But we've also now talked about the shortcut, zip across the top, zip across the bottom. You can do 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, and then you'd put it in simplest form, but 3/16 is already in simplest form. Or we could do 3/4 times 1/2 by doing 3 times 1 is 3, and 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, this is prior knowledge you should already have. I'm also going to kind of go way back in your prior knowledge to 5th grade multiplication of whole numbers, where your 5th grade math teacher taught you how to use an area model to solve a problem like 23 times 14. Let me remind you how you did that. You turned 23 into 20 plus 3, and you turned 14 into 10 plus 4. And then you did some multiplication. So 10 times 20 is 200. 20 times 4 is 80. 3 times 10 is 30. And 3 times 4 is 12. And then you added those parts together. So you had 200 and 80 and 30 and 12. And we're going to add, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then 322 is the final answer. This is prior knowledge that you should already have. Okay, now we're going to use that prior knowledge to solve some mixed number problems. So this lesson 5-8 in your Red Holt textbook, is on multiplying mixed numbers. Okay, so I want to show you how to do this. If I'm going to do 5.5 times 3/8. Okay, the strategy I'm going to use is what I call the break it apart and put it back together strategy. You're allowed to turn 5.5 into 5.5. And then you can take each of those parts and multiply it by 3/8. But then after you have two separate answers, you're going to put them together to make your whole. That's the break it apart and then put it back together strategy. That will give me my answer. Okay, I took 5.5 and I broke it into 5.5. I'm going to multiply both parts by 3/8 and then I'm going to put them together to find an answer. Well, I can do that because I'm going to do 5 times 3/8. Let's see. I know that that's 15/8 because that's like 5 groups. 1, 2, 3. These are my groups. 4, 5 groups, and each group has 3/8 in it. And I can count them. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15/8, which I know is the same thing as 1 whole and 7/8. Okay, so I just did that part of the problem. I have an answer for 5 times 3/8. It is 1 7/8. And now I'm going to do the other part of the problem, 1/2 times 3/8. I know I can zip across the top and zip across the bottom. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, but so now I have the answer to this part. I did both parts, and now I'm going to put them back together. So I have up here 1 7/8, and I'm going to put that with 3/16. Now that looks a little tricky, but you know how to solve problems like this. The first thing you always do is find a common denominator. I know that 16 can be a common denominator, which means I don't have to change my 3/16 because it was already in 16. 8 times 2 is 16, so 7 times 2 is 14. I'm going to add, that is 1 and 14, 15, 16, 17 sixteenths, which is the same thing. Think about this. This 17 sixteenths is 1 whole and 1/16 more. So 1 and 1 is 2 wholes and 1/16. Okay, but what I just used was the break it apart and put it back together strategy to find my answer. Let's do another one that's like that. Here's my second problem. The problem is 3 3/4 times 1/2. Okay, I'm going to break it apart. So I'm going to break my 3 3/4 into 3 3/4. And I'm going to take each of those parts and multiply it by 1/2. I'm going to do a little bit of rewriting. Let's see. So this problem is going to be 3 wholes times 1/2. Well, I know that. That's 3 halves. That's like 3 groups of 1/2. That would give me 3 halves or 1 1/2. Okay? If you don't know how I got that, go back to the prior knowledge at the beginning of the movie. So I just did that part of the problem, and here's my answer. Maybe I'll even write my 1 1/2 down here because I know that that's the answer for that part. And then I can do this other one, 3/4 times 1/2. Okay, this problem right here, I can do that over here because I can use the shortcut, zip across the top, zip across the bottom. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, so this problem right here, the answer is 3/8. I broke it apart. I solved the parts. Now I'm going to put the parts together. The problem I have to do is 1 1/2, because that's this part, put together or added to 3/8. That looks a little scary, but I know I can do it because the first thing I'm going to do is find common denominators. Okay. If my current denominators are 2 and 8, then I know a denominator I can use is 8, because 2 I can turn into 8 by multiplying by 4. Okay. Oh, well, this is already an 8, so that one stays. 1/2 I know is the same thing as 4/8. I'm going to add. I still have my 1 whole, and then I have 4/8 plus 3/8 is 7/8. And that's the final answer. Now, It's not always going to be that simple where it's one mixed number times a fraction. It could instead be two mixed numbers multiplied by each other. So think about this. If the problem was 4 3/4 times 2 1/2, a strategy that I can use is that area model multiplication that you learned in 5th grade. Think about it, and it's a lot like the break it apart and put it back together strategy. I'm going to turn my 4 3/4 into 4 3/4, okay? And I'm going to turn my 2 1/2 into 2 1/2. And then I'm going to do multiplication, just like area model. 4 times 2 is 8. That's easy, okay? This box over here is 2 times 3/4. Two groups of 3/4. Well, two groups of 3/4 is 6/4, which is, let's see, 1 2/4, or it could also be 1 1/2. Any of those are good answers. This box right here is going to be 4 from up here times 1/2, or 4 groups of 1/2. Well, 4 groups of 1/2 is 2 wholes. Okay, but I could think about it like this. That's 4 halves, and 4 halves is the same thing as 2. And then this box over here is 3/4 and 1/2. So I'm going to multiply those together. 3/4 times 1/2. Oh, I can use zip across the top, zip across the bottom. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, so here are all of my parts in area model multiplication. Then all I have to do is add them together. I have to add 8 plus 2 plus 1 1/2 plus 3/8. Whoa, that seems scary, okay? But I know I can do it if I make common denominators. There's only 2 fractions in this addition, okay? And the denominators in those fractions are 2 and 8. I know I can turn 2 and 8 both into 8ths. So I'm going to keep my 8. I'm going to keep my 2. I'm going to turn my 1 1/2 into 1 and some 8ths. And then I can keep my 3/8. Let's see, 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. Now I can add 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 wholes. And then there's 4/8 plus 3/8 is 7/8. That's my final answer. Do you see what I did? I took my 4 3/4 and broke it apart, my 2 1/2 and broke it apart, and then I did all the little chunks, and then I put all the chunks back together at the end and got a final answer of 11 7/8. We're going to do just one more. Here's the last one. The problem is 2 3/4 times 4 2/3. I'm going to use my knowledge of area model multiplication. I'm going to draw a big area model so I have lots of room to write. 2 3/4, I'm going to break it into 2 3/4. 4 2/3, I'm going to break it into 4 2/3. Okay, this is just like in my prior knowledge part of this video where we were talking about doing 23 times 14. I broke 23 into 20 and 3 and 14 into 10 and 4. Okay, I broke it apart and then at the end I put it back together. That's the same as this problem. I'm taking my 2 3/4 and I'm breaking it into its parts. 4 2/3, breaking it into its parts. I'm going to do each of the multiplications and then at the end I'm going to put them back together. Let's see, 4 times 2 is 8. This box right here is 2 times 2/3. Well, 2 groups of 2/3, that's 4/3, which is 1 1/3. This box over here is 4 times 3/4, 4 groups of 3/4. 4 groups of 3/4, let's see. Well, that would be 12/4. And 12/4 is the same thing as, let's see, 4/4 and 4/4 is 8/4 and 4/4 more. Ooh, that's the same thing as 3 wholes. And then in this box, I have 3/4 and 2/3. I can do that. 3/4 times 2/3. I'm going to use zip across the top. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 3 is 12. And then I'm going to put it in simplest form. 6/12 is the same thing as 1/2. Now I have all of my parts, and I'm going to put them back together. So I have 8 plus, let's see, 3 plus 1 1/3 plus 1/2. That seems scary, but if I just do common denominators, it's going to get a lot easier. A common denominator, if I have thirds and halves, could be sixths. So my 8 wholes can stay the same, my 3 wholes can stay the same, my 1 here can stay the same, but I got to turn it into sixths for my fractions. 1/3 is the same thing as 2/6. 1/2 is the same thing as 3/6. I'm going to do some addition. 8 plus 3 is 11, and 1 more is 12. Okay, so I got that much. And then 2/6 plus 3/6 is 5/6. That's my final answer. 2 3/4 times 4 2/3 is 12 5/6. I hope that helps. Be sure to look at my website for the video response form. I will see you in class tomorrow.